Hi, yeah, my name is Leonard, and today I want to talk to you about farmland. This might be the image that some of you think about when I say the word farmland, but next slide. Actually, what's often overlooked at farmland over the last few years has become a very internationally contested asset class, where huge institutions as well as high net worth, ultra high net worth individuals such as Bill Gates are really competing with farmers to buy farmland. Next slide, please. They do that for a variety of reasons. Very simply, it's a supply and demand issue. So we're a growing population, we all need to eat, and farmland is our main source of food. At the same time, farmland is getting increasingly scarce due to urban areas expanding, erosion, etc. So that's a simple investment thesis. Next slide, please. Caught up in the middle of all of that is farmers like this guy behind me from Friesland, who is also, they're looking for alternative ways of financing their business and kind of competing in this new environment. Another group that's being left out are retail investors, which are simply being priced out of farmland investments. Next slide, please. So that's where I come in with CropiFi. With CropiFi I aim to basically build a platform where I connect retail investors and farmers basically with financial products that benefit both parties. Next slide. And yeah, to do that, in my opinion, tokenization of farmland is the very first step and a key move to basically bring liquidity to this asset class. Next slide. And the farmer could set certain prerequisites to this deal in the smart contract before, like a minimum holding period, or the way he wants to basically distribute a premium to these investors for the investment duration. Next slide, please. Another nice benefit of tokenization and the blockchain is lending pools. You could open lending pools where farmland owners, whether they're retail investors or farmers, could collateralize their farmland and basically take out a loan. It's also maybe a nice tool to really incentivize sustainability. You could open a pool where only certified organic farmland could be collateralized, and the pool could have a lower interest rate, which might be maybe an interesting treasury management tool for a refi DAO. To just earn sustainable, let's say, yield on your capital. Next slide, please. Where am I with CropiFi? It's basically just me at this point, so I'm really looking forward maybe to reach out to some people that are interested in agriculture, in finance, in blockchain, to come out to me, to speak to me. I'm looking for team members. There's a lot of legal queries that need to be addressed. If you have any advice for me on that. And lastly, development. I have an agricultural background myself, so if you're a blockchain developer and you feel intrigued by that, please reach out to me. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Wow. You went faster.
One second.
Yeah, that was pretty fast. Thank you.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
It's 5 minutes. Exactly.
So yeah, your background in agriculture, that interests me. So what is the problem exactly with farmers today? Is there a problem for funding a new farmland, or how are they financing the farmland today?
Well, today it's basically with loans and interest rates, I guess. But I mean, interest rates are coming up, and they're just increasingly competing with huge investors that have institutional capital available to snap up any farm that comes onto the market. So I thought it would be a nice tool using the blockchain to basically connect retail investors with farmers, and then together they could maybe, stand up against. I mean, I'm not trying to make these huge institutions villains, but to have a better chance in this market.
And what's your background exactly in agriculture?
So I've studied agribusiness, and right now I'm doing a master in organic agriculture.
Got it. Okay. So today it's hard for farmers to get a loan at the bank and try to expand their land.
I would say so. And also banks often don't understand how sustainability works and how you could maybe incentivize that with certain like I said, with a sustainable, organically certified lending pool, for example. Banks don't really understand that. How you could use finance as a tool to also incentivize sustainability in farming. And I think the blockchain and smart contracts, etc., is a really nice way to kind of put that into practice and also find an audience for that over the blockchain that was willing to invest in that.
Got it. Okay. And have you spoken then done any market research, spoken to farmers that are actually wanted to tokenize their farmland?
No, so far I've mostly spoke to investors, or basically to retail investors. I'm myself active in the realty community. It is basically the same concept with residential real estate, and I see a lot of people that want to invest in farmland. And at the same time, yeah, I've this farming background more or less from my academic background, and I just saw a perfect match to not just basically invest, but also give it some kind of purpose. So I think it's a very good fit.
And the investors, I read in the white paper that it's 4 to 5% interest on the farmland if they invest. Is the yield right?
So I think I grabbed that from, there's 1 or 2 Web2 companies that do a similar kind of approach, and I grabbed it from them. But you can have a whole range of different return on investments depending on.
We can check with the audience. Is there anyone in the audience that would take a 4 to 5% yield in crypto, investing in tokenized farmland? Raise your hands. So that's 2 out of.
If it's done well.
It's 2 out of 50 maybe. So 3 out of 50. So yeah, that's maybe a good number to start with. Well, thanks. I'm going to hand it over to the next judge.
All right, thank you.
So I am very interested in agritech. I think it's I find it important. But from what I've read, there is a lot of agritech out there that farmers just don't use, that the technology is too overwhelming or it's just too burdensome to deal with. How do you anticipate farmers would use this, if they use it?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I basically started out this project thinking of investors. And I think that would still be kind of a way to enter the market and then get known to farmers for basically buying farms and kind of have some kind of network effect. But yeah, I think onboarding farmers onto the blockchain is difficult. So yeah, you have to make it very easy, not a techie environment. If they need to download MetaMask and then do all these kind of steps, I think then you already lost them. So you need to have some kind of user experience that's very friendly and easy to use.
And as someone who uses crowdfunding platforms, I find it quite easy to do it without crypto and without blockchain. So how do you intend to make it a good experience and necessary to use blockchain?
Yeah, so I mean, I see that, and that process is basically the same, but for me it's more about the opportunities you have afterwards. So you have these peer-to-peer transactions you basically can do. You can sell your shares, you can collateralize your assets. And these things are not really possible they're possible in a Web2 environment, but not in a peer-to-peer kind of manner, right? It's the company or the crowdfunding platform first has to allow it and make it's very centralized to basically their reach, whereas in the blockchain it's more open. Capital can come in from all kinds sorts of directions.
And so does the farmer have any say in who buys their land, and does the token holder have any decision-making power over what happens with the land?
Yeah, so I mean, usually the way this works is that there's a minimum investment period, so you would already have to kind of communicate that there will be, let's say, a 10-year investment period where this farmland is basically not owned by the farmer, and then in that period you could make it tradable on secondary markets maybe. But then after 10 years, it would somehow, the farmland would have to be sold again in real life. And what was your question exactly, sir?
I was asking about who is allowed, does the token holder get to make any decisions with how the land is used? And I think you answered my other question.
Yeah, I think it makes it more difficult, but of course I think in the future there's so many governance kind of structures you could set up and kind of interesting dynamics, and you could kind of introduce into these environments, crypto environments, and maybe make it a website where you can somehow incentivize users to use their tokens to vote on certain practices that are being used on the farm. But I think that's more for the future than for now, whereas now it's more static kind of investment that you do once, and then you maybe don't have that much control over what's happening at the farm level. But more, you can still basically sell it on secondary markets or collateralize it. That's basically what the options you have, which are not usually given to you right now as an investor in the Web2 space, in the farmland sector?
And my last question before the other judges ask theirs. You referred to the U.S. often, or mostly with your presentation. Do you intend to launch this in the U.S. first? How do you anticipate this being done? Or is that why you need your legal friends?
So I've based all my legal research basically on Realty, and they exist in the US, they do it in the US in the same way that I explained with these legal wrappers. I know that this kind of way has never been challenged in court, but it works so far. And also I have done some work for basically farmland investing funds in the US. So that's where I have a network of, let's say, land brokers, and I already know how it kind of works. Secondly, it's also compared to, let's say, Europe, Netherlands, Germany, Western Europe, where we are right now, US is much more interesting when it comes to agricultural investments than Europe, and is one of the few geographies that also has pretty clear regulations and ironclad land rights, whereas when you maybe go to somewhere else, it's more difficult. And then,
Okay. So I have a question for you.
Yes.
And then I have some follow-up questions based on how you answer that question. Okay, so the question is this. What advantages are there to using CropiFi over a traditional fund structure?
You mean like the structure that the fund is using, or like as an investor?
Because what CropiFi is doing, it reminds me of a lot of what a agricultural hedge fund or agricultural fund might do, is they invest in different farmers and farmland and companies and so forth, and then they have outside investors that come in and then have a share of the portfolio, just like VanEck does, just like Cyber Capital does for cryptocurrency, right? So because you still need to comply with the regulations in terms of KYC and AML and minimum investment requirements, which does mean that some of the narrative that was part of this presentation, which was this type of egalitarian narrative, we can do this for the little guy, I don't think that's really true, because it doesn't really change anything in that calculation, right?
So you mean minimum investment requirements?
There'd be $100,000 in the case of the US.
But that's, Realty is doing $50, for example. There is farmland funds.
Is this a tokenized wrapper fund that's doing $50?
It's not a fund.
Or a hedge, or US hedge fund?
It's basically you buy a single property every time, so it's a tokenized security.
Right, okay, but I would apply the same skepticism there. And I understand that these have not been challenged in court, but I would argue that this is more like a temporary situation, a form of regulatory arbitrage, because I believe that these are simply just securities and will be treated as such.
Oh yeah, they are securities, and that's why you have to do the KYC and basically the whitelisting, the AML things. But you do apply, basically there's certain SEC exemptions that you can apply for, such as I think Regulation D or Regulation S is what they're called.
But you could do all of that as a traditional fund as well, right? If you have enough size, then you could accept $50 investors potentially.
Yeah.
So then that's fair. You've pushed back on that egalitarian narrative. Good on you, because I do like at least some of the goals of this project, and I hope you find someone in this crowd that maybe you can work with too. But I'll go back to the question now. What advantage is there over CropiFi over using a traditional fund structure, considering that you still need to comply with all of the same regulations and with all of the same requirements, which eliminates a lot of the advantages of using a blockchain in the first place?
Yeah. For me it is, so right now there's a company called Farm Together. They do exactly what I just basically said, but in Web 2. And the way it works there, you can buy a share of a farm. I think they start at like $1,000, but that's it. You cannot send that share you bought to another investor. You cannot collateralize it to take out a loan. And basically these additional benefits, they're not made available to them.
Right, but collateralization in cryptocurrency is possible because there's no KYC, because there's no whitelisting. You could just put it on a decentralized market and make it available for everyone. Like, that's not possible with this.
It is possible. It's on a whitelisted market, and I think it's a nice way. Blockchain, there will be, in my opinion...
But a whitelisted market is no different to, say, the traditional fund structure.
Okay, but then let's say you have, in the future you have everything running on blockchain, maybe. Then you your market that's completely non-KYC, and then you have people that kind of move between these markets, I would say. And you have right now maybe people that are facing difficulties going back from the crypto ecosystem to their bank account. And I think for the people that are already crypto native, it's nice to have a real world asset that they can invest in. That they can just invest in.
I suppose I'm skeptical that this will be allowed in the long run. And I think I tend to have a problem with a lot of quote-unquote blockchain applications that touch the real world, because they require enforcement in the real world. So, I mean, who really gets to decide the ownership of the farm? Is it the blockchain or is it the local courts that decide? And I would argue it's the local courts, and I think this is why you'll keep bumping your head against this type of oracle problem, so to speak, and where does the enforcement really lie? But
I see that.
Yeah, this is very interesting though. I'll pass it on to David here. Thank you.
All right. I have a few questions and points. I think this is it's very good on you. I think you're still very early stage, so probably a bit more research is needed. But just on the comment that Justin made, I think it is possible to have something like this on chain, because USDC is essentially the same, right? So USDC is like your KYC, essentially to put your USD on chain, but then anyone in the world can use USDC, right? So I think this could be
Fungible.
But these tokens could be as well, right? If you tokenize the farm, it could
Actually,
be.
I've
Yeah.
written down here. It's specifically, the specific tokens are tied to the specific property. That's
Okay.
so
Yeah.
But
it's not fungible.
if you could, I don't know, if you go to the US, for example, the Midwest of the US is mostly corn, soy, where you could more or less maybe grade farmland by its quality, by the soil characteristics, and then you could kind of make fungible tokens out of it, because they're more or less the same, and farmland is used for the same purposes.
As a DeFi native degen, there's ways to wrap these non-fungibles into some other token to make it fungible, which would be interesting, like an index of multiple farms around the world. But there's the same problem since 2017 is like the Oracle problem, right? So, like, how do you, like, someone uploads their farm or tokenizes their farm, and then some court decides no, or someone sues the owner of that farm, then it's horrible, because maybe it is being used as collateral on Aave or some lending platform, right? Then you basically destroy the collateralization ratio of that protocol. So that's a big.
But I think that's a risk that also exists in the real world, right?
It indeed is. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. But yeah, that's something that, I mean, because I guess with USD, USDT, USDC, it's a bit, it feels a bit different. This is like, with USDC, like, you're trusting the banks that Circle and Coinbase use to properly, like, enforce the US law, right? Whereas this farm, like, if you have a farm in, I don't know, in Africa somewhere, or in Europe, or in China, or in the US, right? Like what jurisdiction, right? Is a farm in Africa going to be seized, or is the one in Europe going to be seized? So there's like, it's a hard problem to solve. And another thing is around the APYs, like 5% in DeFi is nothing. Like, you get, like, let's say the risk-free rate of Ethereum staking, like 5 to 6%, maybe more, right? Let's say USDC, like minimum probably like 2% or something. So, like, with this, with the associated risks of the Oracle problem, at least probably like 10, 15%, right? So I think you have to think of how to optimize that side.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's like a silver bullet to invest in and get rich off. That's not, it's the opposite. But I think it could very well give a very fundamental base to the TVL that you have in DeFi, because farmland over the years has been a really phenomenal, stable asset compared to other asset classes. It has one of the best risk-adjusted returns. And I think it could be a very nice, let's say, TVL floor that you could have in DeFi that always guarantees a minimum kind of yield. And then, you could maybe not invest your whole portfolio in it, but parts of it to the parts that you maybe consider for less risky approaches.
Yeah, I mean, so I agree that, like, real world assets, like, everyone's trying to move real world assets on chain. and it's needed for diversification, TVL, all those sort of reasons. Yeah, but it's still it's very difficult.
Yes, I agree.
To solve. Have you looked into like what MakerDAO is doing or
MakerDAO.
Centrifuge? Yeah, MakerDAO.
Centrifuge is tokenizing bonds, basically, right?
Well, real world assets. So Centrifuge is working with Aave, and then MakerDAO has split into sub-DAOs, and they have a specifically real world asset sub-DAO. And they've already tokenized like billions in real world assets, and they're looking to like scale that up significantly. So advice or a suggestion would be to talk to someone in Maker, because maybe there's, that they have the capital, and you don't have to, like, don't work with like retail investors, like gather pennies. Like, you're not going to be able to buy up farmland that way. Like, it's a hard slog.
Yeah.
Like, it's not how you succeed in DeFi, right? You need like a lot of money, right? Because you can't just buy one farm, you're going to buy a lot.
Yeah, but also if you look at the TVL of Realty, also during the bear market, they have been steadily growing. They're around 100 million now, and it's all through retail investors. Of course, that could be one institutional investor, but it's also possible, I think, with real hard work to get retail investors together.
True, but like how long has Realty been around?
2018, I think.
2018. Yeah. Aave's been around since 2020 and it reached 20 billion. Like TVL, right? So like 100 million is like good, like it's good, but and already Makers like brought on like 2-3 billion of real world assets. So my point is that like don't look at Realty as like the necessarily good example. They're probably one of the like early players and they did well, but I think there's better ways to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah. I think that's all I had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, judges. Same as before, I'm going to ask you to put a final grade. Anybody from the crowd has a direct question?
Over here.
Oh my. Scream it.
Yes, I have 3 questions.
Oh God.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go.
2 questions. Name me the 3 largest farmers / conventions, which are the 3 in Europe. Where farmers go to know about their crops, to know about fertilization, to know about the Green Deal. Name me 3 of the largest farmers.
Corporations?
No, conferences.
Oh, conferences.
3 where farmers go.
So I personally have been to the Global Ag Investing, but that's in the US. They have one in Europe too, but I haven't been to that one. There's going to be one in Hannover about agriculture and technology.
Go there.
It's going to come up. It's going to be soon.
So, because I'm a salesperson, so I work for a company selling stuff, so just to know. And then the last question, which sales software? I'm assuming that you are going to farmers and you talk to them. I am assuming this, and you want to have some investors and you follow up on them. Do we have the sales software? Do we have
No,
some type?
but can you send me one?
I'm using Pipedrive, which is
Okay, we're not sponsoring.
But anyway, but that's very important because I know, just to give you an idea, for the company I'm working right now, I'm sending out 600 emails a week. Just making sure, people, hey, how are you doing? Hey, we talked on that and that connection. That's very important. If we want to have customers, if we want to talk to somebody, we need to make sure that the engagement flow is very important.
Yeah.
3 questions from the crowd.
Thank you.
I got some new questions from the crowd here, where someone said, one of the key benefits of a product like this is the bargaining power the farmer retains. He is not at the mercy of pressures of large investors. So that would be, again, going towards your retail angle. And then a question here, why do you think the way to go is to reach out to investors? Wouldn't it be better to find a small client and focus on solving their problem and building an MVP?
Small client as in a farmer.
I guess. Yeah.
Probably, yeah, it makes.
All right. Off you go to build your MVP.
All right.
Otters, give me your grades. Huh? 8. Wow. All right. Five.
Well, we love tokenizing stuff at VanEck, so probably you should go ahead and figure it out. There's a lot of regulatory stuff to figure out, but
I'll connect you.
you're definitely on a good way. And we would love to tokenize houses in the future, tokenize everything, tokenize the bar here, tokenize this microphone maybe that's using a tokenize cars. But tokenized farmland's also a good one, so go ahead with it.
All right. David.
Yep. 6.
6. Nice.
So just one comment I had was, I think this is a big problem for DeFi, needed, but it's not a big problem for farmers, or you haven't shown that at least. So I think that's what you need to work on, and that's probably similar to the other comment around the MVP, like get a farmer, try and buy their farm or something.
So I have to live up to the expectation of being a harsh judge here, so I will go with 4, but I like what you're doing. I do, and I do want you to succeed, because I would like to be wrong on this one. It's one of those cases, so yeah, good stuff. Thank you.
We are going to resume now for a break. Everybody go and enjoy the bar. We'll be back in 30 minutes to listen to Poseidon and Sengo.